you can think about the core gameplay elements in a gamified system in terms of loops. And here I mean loops similarly to the way computer software programs often operate. Think about a simple program that is running a constant loop: check for key press, check for key press, check for key press. And then if someone presses a key on the keyboard, it fires off another process or subroutine which says put that letter on the screen, and then go back into the loop. Check for another key press, check for another key press, check for another key press. And when someone does something, it breaks the cycle and goes off in another direction. So a game will also have those kinds of loops. Structures that are repetitive, recursive, but also branching off in different directions. And in particular, we're going to look at two kinds of activity loops in a game, or especially in a gamified system, which I'll call engagement loops and progression loops. Engagement loops operate at the micro level, individual user actions. Progression loops operate at the macro level, broader structures of activity throughout the course of a game. So the first one is the engagement loop. And this is the constant process of first motivators appearing, the game giving the user something to do, some reason to be motivated, to take an action, to overcome a challenge, to go and do something in the game. And then the motivation, if it's strong enough, effective enough, will lead to the action. Maybe it won't, at which point the loop dies, but then another motivator comes up. And then at that point, the user takes the action. They want to get the points to get to the reward, so they go and spend time on that part of the site. That's the action. And then the user gets feedback. Once again, the importance of the user having clear, direct, and immediate feedback on what they're doing. Seeing the points they've received, seeing the level of their performance, that in and of itself then becomes a motivator. So that's why this is a loop. The action produces the feedback becomes a form of motivation, the motivation leads to more actions. So designing a gamified site involves structuring the way that that loop happens. And this will be more evident for some kinds of gamification than others. The more experiential, game-like types of activities may not be quite as clear-cut. But if you think about especially the PBL types of sites, think about Foursquare. Your action of checking in then produces some feedback, some information that you see about how many points, about badges that you've unlocked, about congratulations, you're the mayor, and so forth, which then hopefully will motivate you to engage in some other action, which might be checking in somewhere else. It might be looking at your friends and seeing what they're doing, or reading something about the location that you're at. The point is, a well-designed gamified system will keep that process moving so that each piece reinforces each other piece. That's the micro-level structure that drives forward the action in a gamified site. The way that motivation comes together with feedback and with the set of target behaviors. We can also look more generally at how the gamified system moves forward through what are called progression loops. And basically now let's step back from individual actions and motivations and look at the overall structure of what happens to users in the site. At one level, the way that this is typically done in game design is there are a series of fairly small challenges which are part of a larger challenge. So you don't want to just say to the players, go and start here and get all the way over to here, because that seems overwhelming. You say, here's your overall objective, but you're going to get there by means of some specific steps. Here are the quests that we're going to give you along the way, and they are typically going to be part of some sub-challenges. So this red one and this red one are intermediate kinds of challenges, And overall, the goal of the game is to get from the start to the finish. So that's one kind of progression loop, start to finish through a set of intermediate steps, which are all balanced in an effective way so that the user has a sense of, first of all, the ease of the individual steps. The next step is right there in front of me, as well as the sweep and the potential of the ultimate goal, which also motivates. Another way to think about this is as a representation of the player journey. The player's evolution in the game from a newbie, a novice, to a master. And typically the way this is done in games is through rising and falling action. So the first step is onboarding, that process of getting someone up to speed as quickly and efficiently as possible, and as much as possible within the game itself, getting them to the point where they know how to play the basics of the game on their own, and then you start moving up to a higher level, and then at some point you take a rest. If it's constantly up the slope, that's too challenging. People get exhausted, so we give them a break. The difficulty ramps down, and then it ramps up again, and then it ramps down, and then it ramps up again, and at some point we get to a boss fight. You'll recall this was one of the game components that I described, where the game says now you have a really hard challenge to conquer if you want to get to the next level. So this is typically a demarcation point of getting to the next overall major level or segment of the game, and an opportunity for real achievement, real accomplishment, demonstration of mastery over that part of the game. The boss fight is something you have to overcome, and then once you do, you get a little more rest, and then you start climbing again. And ultimately, you're all the way up here when you started all the way down here. And when you look back, you've made tremendous gains towards mastery that, if it's done well, motivates people through that sense of competence that I talked about under self-determination theory. But it's done in a natural way that people don't feel like they're on a grueling forced march. The system allows them to progress through this integrated set of challenges. It also makes the process feel more interesting to people. It's not unitary. Every moment of the game is not the same kind of challenge. You're not getting wave after wave after wave of monsters. There's enough variety there that makes it interesting. So a well-designed game and a well-designed gamification system will typically have well-structured engagement loops that ensure that feedback pushes towards motivation, which pushes towards action, and so forth. And also well-structured progression loops, which get the user from that early stage, easy to learn, up to that very hard stage of mastery, tough to master, through a natural set of processes that allow them to progress through the game.